Nietzsche is one of the few philosophers people feel confident about without having read. His name circulates freely in popular culture, detached from context, tone, and intent. He is quoted by people who despise philosophy, invoked by movements he would have rejected, and blamed for ideas he explicitly opposed. As a result, Nietzsche is not merely misunderstood, he is pre-understood, and that is far worse. Most philosophers are misread because they are difficult. Nietzsche is misread because he is seductive. His writing is sharp, memorable, and confrontational. He does not sound like a cautious academic. He sounds like someone who knows something dangerous and is daring you to keep up. This makes his sentences portable. They escape their arguments. They circulate on their own. And once they do, Nietzsche becomes whatever the reader already wants him to be. This is why Nietzsche is claimed simultaneously as a nihilist and as a prophet of meaning, as a defender of cruelty and as a philosopher of joy, as a proto-fascist and as a radical individualist, as a destroyer of morality and as a secret moralist. These contradictions are not evidence of richness alone. They are evidence of methodological failure in how he is approached. Nietzsche himself anticipated this. He did not expect to be understood quickly or widely. In fact, he repeatedly states the opposite. He writes for a small number of readers who are patient, psychologically curious, and willing to turn suspicion inward rather than outward. He describes most readers as incapable of reading him properly, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack honesty about their own motives. The first mistake people make with Nietzsche is assuming he is trying to persuade them. He is not. He is diagnosing. He is probing. He is testing. Much of his writing is deliberately excessive, one-sided, or provocative, not because he believes only one side of an issue exists, but because exaggeration exposes hidden commitments. Nietzsche uses overstatement the way a doctor uses pressure to locate pain. This creates a paradox. Nietzsche is clearest where he is most dangerous to misunderstand. His most famous lines, "God is dead, what does not kill me makes me stronger, beyond good and evil," are not conclusions. They are entry points. When treated as slogans, they collapse into nonsense. When treated as diagnoses, they open entire philosophical landscapes. So before any concept is explained, before nihilism, before the will to power, before the overman, one thing has to be made clear. Nietzsche is not offering a worldview you can adopt. He is offering a way of seeing through worldviews, including your own. If you read him looking for confirmation, you will find it. If you read him looking for enemies, you will find them. And if you read him looking for comfort, you will misunderstand him completely. Nietzsche is difficult not because his ideas are obscure, but because they demand something rare. The willingness to ask not just whether an idea is true, but why you want it to be true in the first place. That is the Nietzsche problem. And unless it is confronted first, everything that follows will be distorted. Nietzsche does not merely argue with ideas, he argues with readers. This is one of the most important things to understand about him, and one of the least understood. Most philosophers assume a cooperative reader, someone trying, in good faith, to follow an argument to its conclusion. Nietzsche assumes the opposite. He assumes readers are defensive, self-deceptive, morally invested, and largely unaware of their own motives. This is why Nietzsche's style is so unusual. He writes aphorisms instead of treatises, poetry instead of syllogisms, prophecy instead of exposition. He contradicts himself, changes tone without warning, praises what he later condemns, and condemns what he earlier praised. This is not carelessness, it is strategy. Nietzsche believed that most philosophical writing fails because it flatters the reader's self-image. It reassures them that they are rational, moral, and sincere. Nietzsche does none of this. He provokes, mocks, flatters, insults, and seduces, often in the same paragraph. The point is not to confuse, but to disarm. A reader who feels offended, delighted, or unsettled is already revealing something about themselves. He calls this writing in masks. Nietzsche does not speak with one voice, he performs personas: the psychologist, the prophet, the immoralist, the poet, the iconoclast. None of these masks should be taken as his final position. They are instruments. Each one exaggerates a perspective so that its hidden assumptions become visible. This is why reading Nietzsche literally is a category mistake. When he praises cruelty, he is not endorsing sadism. When he attacks compassion, he is not advocating heartlessness. He is isolating tendencies, pushing them to extremes, and watching how readers react. If you recoil in moral outrage, that reaction itself is part of what he wants to examine. Nietzsche once wrote that only those who can read slowly, suspiciously, and with delight should read him at all. Slow reading is not about patience alone. It is about resisting the urge to immediately classify what you read as true, false, good, or evil. Nietzsche wants to interrupt that reflex. He wants you to ask, why did this line provoke me? Why did I agree so quickly? Why did I feel personally addressed? In this sense, Nietzsche's books are less like arguments and more like psychological tests. They do not tell you what to think. They expose how you think. They do not give you beliefs. They reveal attachments. This is why two people can read the same passage and come away with opposite interpretations. And both interpretations may say more about the readers than about Nietzsche. This also explains why Nietzsche is so frequently weaponized. His writing is easy to extract from context and hard to discipline. People pull out the mask that flatters them and ignore the ones that accuse them. The nationalist finds arrogance, the nihilist finds despair, the authoritarian finds hierarchy, the rebel finds freedom. Nietzsche anticipated this too. He once remarked that he would be born posthumously and misunderstood for a long time. To read Nietzsche properly, then, requires abandoning a comforting assumption that philosophy exists to make your position clearer and stronger. Nietzsche's philosophy exists to make your position unstable. If you emerge unchanged, you have not read him carefully enough. This is why Nietzsche does not invite agreement. He invites exposure. If Nietzsche were introduced to the modern world through social media, he would recognize it immediately and despise it, not because of technology itself, but because of what it does to thought. Nietzsche feared a culture that consumes ideas without digestion, that collects phrases instead of understanding arguments, and that treats language as ornament rather than discipline. That culture now defines how he is read. Nietzsche's writing is uniquely vulnerable to quotation. His sentences are sharp, compressed, and memorable. They look self-contained even when they are not. Extracted from their context, they feel complete, like verdicts rather than provocations. This makes Nietzsche ideal for intellectual vandalism. His words can be taken, repurposed, and redeployed without the structure that gave them meaning. God is dead becomes atheistic triumphalism. Beyond good and evil becomes moral license. What does not kill me makes me stronger becomes motivational cliché. In each case, the quote survives while the argument dies. Nietzsche warned explicitly against this. He distrusted readers who wanted conclusions without labor, certainty without struggle. For him, ideas were not consumables. They were exercises. To understand a thought meant to earn it, to follow it through its consequences, its dangers, its psychological costs. Quotation culture does the opposite. It allows people to borrow Nietzsche's authority without submitting to his discipline. His words become aesthetic accessories, signals of depth, rebellion, or intelligence. But Nietzsche had contempt for this kind of intellectual tourism. He believed that thinking should wound before it heals, and that ideas taken lightly become lies. There is another danger here. When Nietzsche is reduced to quotes, he becomes morally unaccountable. His thought appears to endorse whatever the quote seems to support in isolation. This is how Nietzsche is blamed for things he opposed and praised for things he would have attacked. The quote replaces the thinker, the slogan replaces the diagnosis. This is not just a modern problem. Nietzsche already saw it in his own time. He described readers who skim, who rush, who read for confirmation rather than transformation. He insisted that his books required a very specific kind of reader, one who reads slowly, rereads, and resists the urge to simplify. In a sense, Nietzsche wrote against mass readership. He was not interested in being popular. He was interested in being precise. To read Nietzsche through quotation is to reverse his entire project. He was trying to expose how language manipulates us, how metaphors harden into truths, how concepts gain authority through repetition rather than justification. When his own sentences are treated that way, the irony is complete. This series will not quote Nietzsche for effect. When his words appear, they will appear inside arguments, inside contexts, inside problems. Not because quoting is forbidden, but because quoting without understanding is a form of intellectual theft. Nietzsche's ideas demand ownership, and ownership requires work. If Nietzsche teaches anything at all, it is this: an idea that costs you nothing is worth nothing. One of the most persistent ways Nietzsche is misunderstood is by being treated as a system builder, as someone offering a coherent doctrine that can be summarized, taught, and applied like a theory. This expectation comes from how philosophy is usually taught. Plato has forms, Descartes has dualism, Kant has the categorical imperative. Nietzsche has no equivalent structure, and this is not a failure, it is deliberate. Nietzsche distrusted philosophical systems because he believed they lied about their origins. Systems present themselves as neutral, rational, and universally valid. Nietzsche argued that they are none of these things. Behind every system, he saw a temperament, a hierarchy of instincts, a psychological need seeking justification. A philosophy, in his view, is a confession, even when it pretends to be mathematics. This is why Nietzsche refuses to give you a single organizing principle that explains everything. The will to power is not a metaphysical law. The overman is not a goal for humanity. Eternal recurrence is not a cosmological theory. Each of these ideas functions as a lens, not a foundation. They are tools for interpretation, stress tests for values, not axioms to be believed. Readers who try to assemble Nietzsche into a system usually end up flattening him. They decide which idea is central, elevate it above the others, and force everything else to align. This is how Nietzsche becomes a crude power theorist, a nihilist, or a prophet of domination. But Nietzsche's thinking is intentionally mobile. He approaches problems from multiple angles, often undermining one perspective with another. What looks like inconsistency is often a refusal to let any single standpoint harden into dogma. Nietzsche once described philosophers as spiders spinning webs and then getting caught in them. Systems trap their creators as much as their followers. Nietzsche wanted freedom of movement, intellectual agility rather than architectural completeness. He valued insight over consistency, honesty over harmony. A contradiction for Nietzsche is not necessarily an error. It can be a sign that a thinker is refusing to simplify life to fit an idea. This makes Nietzsche uncomfortable to teach and easy to abuse. Without a system, readers are tempted to invent one for him. They treat his books as unfinished blueprints rather than as deliberate provocations. But Nietzsche never intended to give his readers a map. He intended to unsettle their sense of direction. Understanding this changes how every concept in his work should be approached. You do not ask, "Is this Nietzsche's final view?" You ask, "What is this idea doing? What does it expose? What does it attack? What kind of reader does it repel or attract?" Nietzsche's philosophy is functional, not foundational. This is also why Nietzsche remains dangerous. Systems can be domesticated. They can be taught, institutionalized, neutralized. Nietzsche resists this because he refuses to stabilize. His thought keeps moving, turning back on itself, questioning its own motives. To read Nietzsche as a system is to miss his deepest conviction, that life itself cannot be systematized without being falsified. Nietzsche is not offering you a structure to inhabit. He is offering you a hammer and watching carefully to see what you strike. At the deepest level, Nietzsche is misread because he is taken to be doing morality when he is actually doing psychology. Most readers approach philosophy expecting arguments about what is right and wrong, what should be valued, what ought to be done. Nietzsche is far less interested in these questions than in a prior one: why people need certain values in the first place. Nietzsche does not begin with moral claims. He begins with drives, instincts, fears, and desires. He asks what kind of life produces a particular moral outlook, what kind of temperament needs a certain belief in order to function. This is why his critiques feel personal. They are not abstract refutations, they are exposures. When Nietzsche attacks Christianity, he is not primarily arguing that it is false. He is arguing that it expresses a specific psychological condition, one shaped by resentment, weakness, and the inability to affirm life as it is. When he criticizes egalitarian morality, he is not defending cruelty or hierarchy for their own sake. He is asking what kind of people require moral systems that flatten difference and treat excellence with suspicion. This is where most readers go wrong. They hear Nietzsche criticizing compassion and conclude that he opposes kindness. They hear him praising strength and conclude that he endorses brutality. But Nietzsche is not making policy recommendations. He is diagnosing moral emotions. He is asking what moral language does, not whether it sounds noble. The key distinction is this: moral philosophy tells you what you should value. Nietzsche asks what your values say about you. This reversal is deeply uncomfortable. It removes the moral high ground. It turns accusation into self-examination. Instead of asking whether an idea is good, Nietzsche asks whether it is life-enhancing or life-denying, whether it comes from abundance or from lack. This psychological approach also explains why Nietzsche seems merciless. He does not soften his analyses to protect self-esteem. He believed that false moral consolation was more harmful than harsh truth. To him, a comforting lie that preserves weakness is more dangerous than a painful insight that demands growth. His cruelty, where it exists, is directed not at people, but at illusions. Modern readers often resist this because they want Nietzsche to be on their side. They want him to validate their moral instincts, to provide philosophical backing for positions they already hold. But Nietzsche refuses allegiance. He turns suspicion in all directions, including toward the reader. If you feel personally attacked by Nietzsche, that reaction is not a misunderstanding. It is often the point. Understanding Nietzsche as a psychologist also clarifies why his ideas can be misused. Psychological diagnoses can be weaponized when stripped of self-application. Readers apply Nietzsche to others while exempting themselves. They label enemies as resentful, weak, or decadent, while assuming their own motives are pure. Nietzsche anticipated this too. He warned that his philosophy would be least dangerous to those who apply it inward and most dangerous in the hands of those who apply it outward. To read Nietzsche well, then, requires a discipline most readers avoid: the willingness to treat his critiques as mirrors rather than weapons. He is not asking you to abandon morality. He is asking you to understand its origins, its costs, and its hidden motives. Nietzsche's real question is not, what should we value? It is, what kind of life needs these values in order to survive? Before moving any further into Nietzsche's ideas, one final clarification is necessary. Not about Nietzsche himself, but about how he will be read in this series. Without this, everything that follows risks being distorted in exactly the ways Nietzsche warned against. This series will not treat Nietzsche as an authority to be cited, a doctrine to be adopted, or a worldview to be defended. Nietzsche does not offer a philosophy you can agree with and move on. He offers a way of interrogating values, motives, and cultural habits, including his own. To read him responsibly is not to become a Nietzschean. It is to submit to a particular kind of intellectual pressure. We will therefore read Nietzsche contextually. Ideas will be situated within the problems they were responding to, historical, cultural, and psychological. Concepts like nihilism, the will to power, and the overman will not be presented as slogans or solutions, but as diagnostic tools. When Nietzsche exaggerates, we will ask what the exaggeration is meant to expose. When he contradicts himself, we will ask what perspective is being tested. We will also read Nietzsche psychologically rather than morally. This does not mean suspending ethical judgment indefinitely, but it does mean postponing it. Instead of asking whether Nietzsche is right or wrong, humane or dangerous, we will first ask what kind of human experiences his ideas emerge from, and what kinds of lives they aim to strengthen or undermine. Moral conclusions, where they appear, will come last, not first. Equally important is what this series will not do. It will not turn Nietzsche into a culture war mascot. His critiques of morality, equality, and herd thinking will be explored carefully, without collapsing them into contemporary partisan slogans. Where parallels with modern movements exist, they will be drawn cautiously and precisely, as patterns of moral psychology, not as blanket condemnations. Nietzsche's thought loses its value the moment it becomes a tribal weapon. This series will also resist the temptation to soften Nietzsche. He is not safe. He is not therapeutic. He does not affirm everyone equally. But neither will he be dramatized as a villain or reduced to shock value. Nietzsche is at his best when he is taken seriously. Not literally, not reverentially, but seriously. That means allowing his ideas to challenge modern assumptions without rushing to defend ourselves from them. Finally, this series assumes an adult audience. Nietzsche believed that genuine thinking is rare because it is costly. It demands patience, self-suspicion, and a tolerance for discomfort. These videos will not rush to conclusions. They will unfold slowly, concept by concept, problem by problem. The aim is not agreement, but clarity. If Nietzsche is right about anything, it is this. Ideas are not harmless. They shape what we admire, what we resent, and what we become. To engage with him honestly is to accept that risk. With that framework in place, we can now begin the work itself.